So, got this for Father's Day for those of you listening. Dad jokes, the good, the bad, the terrible. Must say it's
Mm-hmm.
very solid. I'd like to do a dramatic reading. What's
Was this
another name for Santa's
wait,
elves?
wait, wait, is this a good, a dad, or a bad, or a terrible?
They don't classify them. It's just a
Oh,
title.
okay.
What's another name for Santa's elves?
What?
Subordinate clauses.
That's a good one. I like that.
Well, I wasn't the geometry teacher at school.
The geometry teacher at school. What?
Because she sprained her ankle.
Okay. I want to end on a better one.
What does an educated owl say?
An educated owl. What?
Whom?
Nice.
Welcome back to Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, is Ethan. And today we are talking about sharing news, whether you've got good news or bad news or just kind of news that people need to know. We're talking about sharing that with your kids, how you sort of gatekeep that, how you sort of massage the message, and maybe, depending on how the conversation goes, we may drift into some other topics of how we share news with other people, like parents and friends, as things transpire. After that, we've got Working on the Dad Bod. Before that, it's story time. But this is a reminder to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button for this video. Throw a comment. Let us know what you thought. Good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. We'd love to hear it. Visit our website, workingonthedadpod.com. You'll find a link to our YouTube channel. You'll also find links to Apple, Spotify, and you'll be able to find all our socials. If the link's not on there, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. An administrative note, next week is July 4th. And so we are not planning on recording an episode. So we're going to do a double one tonight, and we'll have that next week, but it won't be something brand new and live and timely for all that breaking dad news that you've come to expect. Millions of you listening. Ethan.
So actually, next week is not July.
Oh no,
4th.
we're not.
We
I
are
just messed that up.
Yeah, we are.
We're pre-recording for a couple weeks. We'll have a fresh episode next week, and then 2 pre-recorded episodes after that, because we got July 4th 2 weeks from now, because I wasn't looking at a calendar when I opened the episode, and then a week after that, Ethan and I are actually going on a couples trip, just he and I, and 2 other friends on a double date. Yep. How you doing, Ethan?
Yep. I am okay. If all of you have heard my plea last week to be the next coach of the Lakers with my lack of coaching experience but podcasting experience was denied. They ended up going with another novice in the field with a less good podcast. His name is JJ Redick. And yeah, so I guess I got to get excited for another decade of mediocrity. Yeah.
The thing about wishing to be the next head coach of the Lakers is that dream is always still alive. You can always be the next head coach of the Lakers. You just
possible.
Keep dreaming, man.
Yeah, no, it's great. So, but I'm just worried that they went podcaster this time and might want to go with coaching experience next time.
Yeah, they may want to change it up. It might help to get some stuff on your resume, really work the 4-year-old youth basketball circuit real hard.
No, I don't. No. How about you? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yesterday was Juneteenth, and it was a very relaxing day for us. I know it's a day to be contemplative, but I found myself at the beach doing just that, not having any screen time or anything like that, and just soaking it all in. My son had daycare. My daughter didn't. My mom, my wife, my daughter, and I, we all had a family beach trip with a family friend out to the beach, and my son got to go to school and not hang out with the rest of us. But it made it relaxing for everybody.
Yeah, my kids went to school. My wife went to work. I went golfing with another dad whose family was in the same boat. It's pretty great. And I
Nice.
actually played decent. I'm not going to say I played well, but I played decent. My putting was strong, like
There
wowzer
you go.
strong. Um, and overall played pretty good for me,
Good to hear.
which is
Good to
decent
hear.
for a normal person. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I was able to get out on Father's Day. I played 9 holes. Actually, no, correct that. I played 18. I was intending to play 9 on Wednesday, but it didn't end up transpiring. And so I played 18 on Sunday and did pretty well for myself. The way they had the course set up, though, the tees were really short. And so
Mm,
one of the whole, there were, I think, two of the holes were, one of the holes was a drivable par five, and one of them was like a 420-yard par, or sorry, one was a drivable par four, and one was a 420-yard par five. So like
hmm,
some of it was, a little more manageable than what the scorecard read.
mm-hmm.
So my
There you
my
go.
score was maybe a little inflated there.
Nice, nice. Well, that's always good. Yeah, we played a 9-hole like par 3 and 4 course, and we just played it twice. Booked 2 tee times, so it was
Nice.
nice. Yeah, yeah.
Sounds good. Good
Hmm.
stuff. You want to kick
So
off
I'll
story
get
time, or you want me to
yeah,
go ahead?
I will. So there is this incorrect rumor that I am not good at photography. And people say when I share pictures that it's not a good photo, despite how excellent they really are. And people are honestly just jealous of my skills. However, uh, earlier this week on Monday was my younger daughter's first day in the Panda classroom, which is the 2-year-old classroom. She won't be 2 till the end of August, but because of how summer session and enrollment worked, they moved her up with a bunch of her friends. And I took a little video on my iPhone of my older daughter and her sitting next to each other saying, "Have a great first day in the Pandas." Both of them blew kisses and hugged. And during that, I took a bunch of stills and I found a pretty good still, shared it with some folks. And I know that it is actually on 3 separate phones right now as wallpaper. So F all y'all who think I can't take a picture.
If
Dropping
if
the
if you
mic.
let him take 24 pictures, he might find a good one
And
and really show you guys.
no reason to go one and done. It's art. Enough said.
All right. Well, with that honorable defense out of the way, I'll go ahead and go. So we've been having an issue for past few weeks now, and I've declined to bring it up on the show because I really wanted it to have some sort of resolution, right? I didn't want to just sit here griping and complaining, but my son has been regressing with the potty training that he got to, and that happens. It's natural, but it got to a point where he just stopped telling us he needed to go. If he was prompted and put on the potty, he would go, but he was starting to have a lot of accidents, peeing and pooping his pants. And
Oof.
just like we got to a point where we would get him home and we just immediately take his pants off so that he could do diaper free time, explore a little bit more. But he was even getting to a point where he was just peeing on the floor and just being like, I peed, and like not caring whether he got on the potty or not. It didn't feel like as much of a noticing thing. And so we really tried to do two things. First, we really upped the automatic queuing, right? Like every time we're about to leave, every time we get somewhere, if it's been an hour, go ahead, we're going to try. We're going to try, because if we did that and we prompted him, he would go. But if we left him to his own devices, that's when he was having accidents. Slowly but surely, we sort of work with him and we're talking to him about, hey man, the pee goes on the potty. Isn't this much better? Isn't this great when, we don't have to change your pants and you don't have to, get your socks wet or something like that. We don't have to go through all this trouble, and sort of getting him to see it. And it took a lot. It was a lot of frustration. It was a lot of dirty clothes from school. It was a lot of frustrated grandmas. It was a lot of frustrated parents. Well, 2 frustrated parents and 2 frustrated grandmas. But we eventually got to the point that this week he has gone 3 straight days without an accident, and he's gotten much better. He's been telling us and he's been initiating it. And so we have finally gotten over this. But as he's been going through the process, he's gotten to a point where he's gotten back some of that initial zeal for showing us his work. And what that has meant is we have 2 potties available to him. We have a floor potty, which is just a plastic thing that we can rinse out and dump into our normal potty. And then we have a seat reducer that goes on the normal potty, has a little step, and he can step up on it. Well, he is taken to the seat reducer because he wants to be on the big potty like everybody else, and that's fine. I don't care. It's a little bit more to set up. Obviously, the floor potty, especially if he's pantsless, you can leave it around and he could, in theory, just go and be like, hey, by the way, I went, right? But we set him up, and he gets in this habit of when he goes poop, he drops a turd, and then he gets off the potty. He makes us leave him. He makes us leave him alone, shut the door, goes poop, drops a turd, gets off the potty, opens the door, tells us, makes us come look, shows us, and then says, I have to do more, and climbs back on. And he will do this 5 or 6 times for 5 or 6 turds. And we're just like, stay on the potty. Just do all that you have to do. I don't need to see that one was just one raisin. That was an undigested raisin. Sit on the potty. And so it's become a little bit of a like, I'm glad you're excited. And this is marginally better at this point than having to clean up poopy pants. But it's annoying.
So I'm going to take his side on this and just say, he doesn't just want to show you the final score. He wants you to see every scoring play, the progression. He wants to see how he dominated that potty and made it his personal.
Can I offer an alternative here?
Sure.
Don't make me leave the room. And you could just stand up and I could look and we could eliminate. Like, I would be much more fine with that. But it is mandating, leave me alone. That's what he says. Leave me alone. I'm like, okay, I'll leave you alone. Close the door. Okay, closing the door. Daddy. No. I get the door as I try to open it. Okay, why are you down? Oh, you smeared a little bit. You got a little streak on the seat reducer. It's lovely. Like there's a lot that's unoptimized here.
Sure. Is it perfect execution?
No.
Yeah.
We're getting it done.
Right. Well, glad to hear there's been that kind of progress.
Yeah. Back to where we were. So
yeah.
Should we get into sharing news?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this when you and I were discussing potential topics a few weeks ago is because at the time, and luckily we are past this, my almost 5-year-old, she in her classic Vornado way, she has gone through some lying, and we have been put in a situation a couple times where we have news to tell her, but we don't want her sharing that news further. But we also didn't want to convince her, or we didn't want to tell her to lie. So I found myself struggling mentally with how do you share news because they deserve to know, but you also don't want them to talk about it and encourage lying at this age where, you don't want to be doing like lies or secrets. You want to develop this level of trust and get them to confide in you so that they always know they can trust you. So that was the impetus of me wanting to talk about this. Obviously, the biggest news we ever had to share with her, and this was pre-lying, was, when she was going to become a big sister. Obviously, right. There's the standard, you want to wait 12 weeks roughly to make sure everything's good to go before you share with anybody. But then, like, with a kid, especially my kid, who you tell them one thing, like yesterday, we booked our flights back to Los Angeles for Thanksgiving, which is in 5 months from now. And she keeps saying, when do we get to go on the plane? Now,
Mhm.
we definitely didn't want that to happen with when's the baby gonna come? So it's more of a that's where we found ourselves in the timing issue. So that was a long-winded way of like setting up the premise for why I wanted to talk about it. So I want to kick it to you for a minute and just like your thoughts on sharing news with kids or your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dealing with a couple of things, right? Like kids, and my daughter's still not great at it. I think once kids learn to tell time on their own, they
Mm-hmm.
get much more awareness around how fast time passes. I remember
Mm-hmm.
doing things in elementary school, like they always celebrate the 100th day of school. I see kids
Mm-hmm.
on like friends, kids, sorry, on social media where some schools like dress up like old people for the like people make a big deal out of it. And I'm like, you know what, whatever it takes to get the kids hyped about education, like they dress up like 100-year-old people for the 100th day of school or something like that. I remember on the 100th day of school, we had to sit still in silence for 100 seconds so we could experience what 100 seconds felt like. And to 6 or 7-year-old Alex, that felt like an absolute eternity. But I
Sure.
remember those kind of things and those kind of instances helping me get that sense of time. And I think that's with kids when you're telling them something, right? Take the trip that my daughter took to Paris or any trip she's taking. She's about to go up to Cape Cod with my wife and my son and stay up there for about a month. She's really excited. And she is starting to get a little bit of sense of time, but she can only really operate in days, right? Once you get into weeks and months, it still feels vague for her. If you say 10 days, she's like, okay, I can count that. That's a sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have some
Right.
great marker for when a week has passed. I don't, okay, I'm going back to camp again, but I didn't go to camp yesterday and it was a Wednesday. So I don't really, get what the
Right.
heck's going on. And I think that is a huge part of the basis of this because, like, if any kid you could tell them it's going to be 7 months from now when this baby comes and they got that and that was
Mm-hmm.
enough for them and they could grasp that concept, half the problem would be solved. But
Right.
I think you have like you have a couple of but within that, as far as the sharing of information, that's why it's a problem to share it with them. But I think there's two categories that I find news shares, like
Mm-hmm.
sharing news that I don't want to share with them yet. It's either because there are people that I don't want to know yet,
Right.
or ever, maybe yet,
Mm-hmm.
maybe ever,
True. True.
usually yet. But the second reason would be because they are like not prepared to they're not prepared to handle the information in the
Mm-hmm.
way that, like I think. So it's like one, it's like passing it on. And two, I think that maybe they wouldn't be able to. And I'm trying to sort of think of an example of
So
that second kind.
I actually did just come up with like a real-time example in that my one of the cats or my mom's cat, the cat we got two twin cats when I was a sophomore in high school. One of them has already passed, but this one's on the brink of death, just kind of not in a lot of there's nothing that can be done right now, but he's not in enough pain where the vet wanted to put him down. But there was about a week and a half ago, that could have been the vet appointment where he was going to be put down.
Mhm.
So, I told my daughters who love the cat, like when they go home to Los Angeles at Thanksgiving, they're just obsessed with him. So they wanted to say goodbye to him on FaceTime. The vet and my mom opted not to put him down. So now they're just like constantly asking, did he die yet? And it's one of those, I'm happy to say no. Apparently he's right now just living his best life, really digging into creme brulee, which is a cool way to go out as a cat. But he's still kicking it. And, my mom's making sure he's comfortable, but they'll FaceTime my mom and just be like, where's Lucas? Is he dead? Can I talk to him? So that's I guess a botched situation of news where I wanted to give them the opportunity to say goodbye, but it's kind of like when you say goodbye to somebody in the hallway and then you both walk the same direction. It's just a little awkward. So
Yeah, exactly. And so how I handle it, I think we've talked about some of the scenarios, but how we actually handle the sharing of information is, I think, one, we sort of decide between my wife and I first, what's the situation? Why? I think you have to understand, right, as the parent, why you're hiding it. And I think that's why it's important to sort of classify. And there could be other reasons. I named 2 reasons, and there might be other reasons that you have. But saying that reason out loud helps you assess the problem, right? And so if you say, it's because I don't want so-and-so to know, let's say it's a pregnancy. I'm not going to tell my kid because I don't want them to tell their grandma before I have a chance to tell their grandma, or tell so-and-so before I have a chance, or let it out in the world. Or if I'm switching jobs and they happen to know somebody, one of my coworkers, like I don't want them to tell it before, whatever that kind of news is, right? And so when I approach those kinds of situations, the very easy answer is they know when I'm ready for that next party to know. If I am truly concerned about it, I'm ready. Or the second thing that you can do in these scenarios, and I've done this a couple of times with my daughter, and it usually only works for like short-term stuff. I guess there's a range. It works for really short-term stuff and stuff that she is far enough away that she can forget about it because she's not supposed to say anything and talk about it. So she can't just constantly be like reminding herself of it. And so in those situations, I just tell her, hey, this is a surprise. And this is mostly with my daughter because my son is a parrot at this point. Like he understands concepts and things, but he could be standing there and he'll ruin a game of telephone instantly. So I'm not too worried about what I tell him and it getting misunderstood or getting correctly understood. But with my daughter, I just tell her, hey, this is a surprise. This is the benefit for the person. This is why we want to surprise them. And then I bring her into that surprise and make her part of the telling of the information so that she's excited for the surprise. She's excited for their excitement. And therefore, she's able to hold it in because she's ready to like burst with the news. And because she's a 5-year-old, she can get just as excited about having a new baby as she could be about going to get ice cream. So even if she's like bouncing off the walls, like I have a surprise, it could be like, we're having my favorite meal for dinner tonight, right? And that could be the same energy as like dad just won the lottery. So, that is a little bit helpful when you're doing that.
Yeah, my wife and I, we will have a conversation. It won't be as I don't want to use the word structured. I don't think what you said was structured, but like I don't think about it in terms of, okay, let me say it out loud or like a formal why. It's more just like we kind of go back and forth and say similar questions like who could she tell? Does she need to know today? And is this something we would want her to not talk about? And then if so, like we don't want to encourage lying, so we might as well just hold it in kind of stuff. Because we're very cognizant of the whole like trying to get out of the lying phase right now, most importantly. So
yeah, that makes sense. And I think with the, with those kind of conversations that you're having, especially when the things drift into like, I don't know that they can emotionally handle it. I think this goes back to, our episode where we were talking about death, right? It very much those kinds of things about that they can't emotionally handle, like talking to them in real terms, talking to them in facts, letting them feel their own emotions about it instead of necessarily pushing our emotions on them. And especially with things like that, with death or with sickness, we had, and I mentioned this in that episode, but family member with a cancer scare, and my daughter knew someone with cancer and that person passed away. And so we did not tell her. She to this day does not know that this family member had cancer. It's over now. It's done. But she didn't know about it. And she doesn't know every time, there's a serious medical procedure or something going on until she needs to know. And it's like, hey,
Right.
your grandma or grandfather or mom or dad or whoever had the operation had an operation. And so it's already a done thing, and she can't fret about the results. They're fine. They're just a little sore. You can't jump on them. You can't give them big hugs right now. You just, be really gentle, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And she can kind of get it. So it really, I think for me on that stuff, if there's a lot of unknown, my fear with my daughter, and this is going to vary from kid to kid, but my fear with my daughter is always like, how is she going to spin this in her head? Because she can whip up a story in her head of all the things that are going to happen and be in tears sobbing about things that she hasn't even vocalized that are running through
Right.
her brain like nobody's business. It's honestly impressive when I'm not in the heat of it and I sit back and look at it. But because of that, very much have to manage like what are her potential reactions and like only giving her exactly what she needs to know when there are some definite things so that we can assuage concerns that are already being cooked up in her head before we're even done telling her what's going on.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I will sum up my theory is just that, you and your partner, if it's just you and you're dealing with news or anything that could be shared with a kid, you gotta know the kid, know the situation, 2, determine who they can tell, and then 3, just make the determination on whether they need to know now. Kind of treat it like the nuclear codes or any top secret clearance. Do they have the proverbial need to know?
Well, and I think on that information, I think that's a good summary of the decision tree. And then how that conversation unfolds, I think, like I mentioned, just talking to them in terms that they understand,
Right.
telling them only the things they will understand, because, if you don't think they'll get it, even with your best explanation, it's probably not worth telling them, because that's just going to confuse them. So only tell them the parts that they can grasp, tell them what they need to know, break it down in ways that they understand, and leave lots of space for questions. Because I think that is, if I had to judge my own past performances, I think I have plotted out before exactly what I want to say. And in the same way that my daughter can contrive situations, she can contrive questions. And I don't think she's unique as a kid in that regard. There are going to be questions that you're not going to see coming. And so if you try to just like ward off every question, just keep it short, succinct, explain what you need to explain, but let them ask questions, fill in the gaps, be patient and kind. And I think having that time and space and like setting yourself up mentally to be like, okay, we're going to have a Q&A period after I give my PowerPoint presentation, and you can ask questions, and like, I'll be an open book. I think is probably the best way to go through it. Cause I think not expecting questions is probably a recipe for disaster.
Right. Yeah. Well, honestly, that's kind of all I have on that topic. I don't know if you had any more. I'd be down.
No, because I think this episode expands on a little bit, but dovetails nicely with the Talking About Death episode. So we'll try to link that in the show notes.
Good idea.
Because that's another good episode where I think we went in a little bit more details about specific scenarios, but I think there's some generalities there that can also be gleaned if you've got news to share with your kid, good or bad, because like we want to share it with them, right? Like half the thing we talked about of like, my daughter getting excited about wanting to see somebody else's reaction when they share it. That's the reason we share it, right? Like when we share news, we want to see our kids' reaction. We want to keep them informed, whether it's good or bad. We want to help manage their emotions. I mean, that's really what it's all about, why we're sharing. So if we remember why we're sharing or why we're not sharing, and like base all of our communications around that, I think you're pretty solid.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Shall we work on the dad bod?
Sure.
So I'll just go right into it. I gained last week I was 184.4. I am 185.6. I'm bummed out, but I realize why it happened. I am right in the crux of this major heat wave right now. So I have been working out less, but like the same amount of workouts. So instead of doing my full 5K plus jog, out of fear of heat stroke, I've been kind of cutting it at 2 miles and then walking the rest of the way, trying to still get the same amount of steps in, but obviously I am, not burning, or I'm not exerting myself in the way I was before. Because frankly, it's tough. It's really hot. If
Sure.
I'm still keeping my run up, into the mid 80s, which, I probably shouldn't do, but, I really can't do the full amount. And I don't think I countered that with eating as smartly as I could have. But, 1.2 pounds given all that. Hopefully when this heat wave dies down a bit, I can get back to where I was. So that's
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's tough. I mean that's really it's one of those things where, I mean, the first gut reaction I have to that information is like the difference in your runs is a few hundred calories, kind of thing. It's probably, it could fairly easily be managed by intake. Obviously there's a ton of factors, but one thing that's true, that's interesting, is when people work out, a lot of times it can increase their satiety signals, right? So it's less about just thinking about it like just math equations. The math equation matters, yes, but like how well you can apply said equation, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. Back to that, it's like how well you can apply that. If you're getting better satiety signals, aka how hungry you are, because you're exercising more, you're burning more calories, and your body's better able to say, hey, I'm full, I don't want to eat anymore. And you cut yourself off from consuming calories. And really at the end of the day, like that's helpful. And that's going to vary from person to person about how much these individual factors matter. But it's just like, that's kind of the nature of the beast of dieting. I think using these opportunities where we don't do well to say, okay, this is what it takes. Half the time it's like, yeah, you can open a calorie tracker and wear an Apple Watch and it can say, this is your base metabolic rate and this is how much you burned and this is how much you consumed, and you can still gain weight even if the numbers look right, because it may not be your numbers, right? Your BMR may not be what the algorithm said it is. Your burn rate may not be what your calories burn, may not be what the algorithm said it was. And so sometimes this stuff can be used to just be like, okay, like this is my threshold. If I don't hit these things, the math isn't going to math for me.
Yeah.
Unless I have, these contingencies of like, okay, I specifically know exactly what I'm going to do. Like I normally have a beer or a cocktail and I didn't run for this many calories. And so I'm not going to consume that 200 calories or whatever it is, that's kind of it.
Yeah, no, I get, yeah. And that's where I didn't do my part on the intake, I think.
Yeah. So. For me, I'm pretty much doing the same. I think I'm up 0.2 pounds this week, but I'm not terribly concerned about it. I've been pretty consistent. I've been finding myself doing, I've taken a couple of days here and there to practice intuitive eating to maybe wean myself off of the calorie tracking, but I want to be really careful with it, combining it with continued measurement so that I'm not just like doing the hands up, I'm at the finish line, I don't need to diet anymore, because that's where it's like 1 pound turns into 2, turns into 10. And all of a sudden you're like, I no longer feel good about the progress that I'm at because I'm out eating myself. But I have noticed that as I've upped my calories, one thing that has been really, really, really nice is there are nights where I don't sleep perfectly. There are nights where the kids might wake me up, or I might not be able to fall asleep like I need to. And when I was in a caloric deficit and I went into the gym the next day on little sleep, I felt awful. In doing a workout, I did it. I pushed myself through it. Sometimes I would even, like set PRs, but it was tough. And it was rare that I would set a PR on a tired, low sleep day in a caloric deficit. Now, if I have a bad sleep day, I don't feel as bad because I have more calories in my system and I have more energy. And so my floor for my exercise has been raised. And that feels nice, right? The ceiling has gone up a little bit. Like I've started noticing that it's a little bit easier to add another 5 pounds and another 5 pounds. And it's just going up a little faster. And so I'm like, I like that too. Excuse me. But yeah, so that's been nice. But yeah, it's been pretty consistent and just trying to sort of live in that place for a little bit. And like I said, I think after our guys trip, I may try to cut a little bit more. But I'm not going crazy, because at the same time, I am starting to even notice in the few weeks that I've been on maintenance here that I'm noticing more muscle tone, just like on my body. And so like there's some recomp happening, which is nice, right? Because that's losing the body fat, which is what I really what most people care about anyway. Nobody's ever like, man, I really need to shed some of this muscle I got going on. My bone density is just too darn high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, that's good for you. Happy.
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm really proud of you.
All right, guys. Well, that is all we've got for you tonight. For Ethan, I'm Alex, reminding you to like, subscribe, visit our website, do all the things, share the love, and we will be back with you next week. Thanks, guys.
For a fresh episode.
Fresh episode. Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.